I think that the first, how to start with, because it is a very new thing for us to do a risk-benefit assessment, and we don't know the process. We don't know basically much about it. And it is hard to understand what everything is happening. I think a video of swinging before and afterwards would be very useful for us as well. But I would like to start with the panelists to tell us more. Helena wanted to say something about risk-benefit assessment, to just trigger with a couple of information, and then we will give the chance for some questions from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, one of the things I would like to say is that we didn't really list the benefits here. I think it was quite obvious for everyone. But it's very helpful if you start by listing the benefits. And the benefits, it's what you really value in the place that you have, what the children love. Because when you do when something already exists, there's something that I like very much, which is when I have these videos that I showed you, I spend hours of my life watching children play and sometimes filming. And this is called sometimes post-occupancy evaluation. So when you do that, and if you watch your children playing in a space, you can really spot what they really love, or where they are like tripping, or areas where they do not go, and find out why. Okay, so this is, if you do this, you can start by listing all the benefits, where people are happy, where the children gather, they are playing with the pebbles, all these things. This is really good. And even better, if you are like in a school and the parents are complaining about sand or gravel because the children get dirty, or hygiene, you should take the kids on film so that you can show the parents how happy they are. So that's a way to really record the benefits. Because then the bad part, the bad risk, it's easier to be there, right? So really, so really, be really sure about the benefits and record that if you can. And also, if it's in a school, like all the staff first, to enjoy that and to be part of this evaluation. And also then you can show to the parents, either because they are there or on film in a meeting or whatever. The other thing I would like to also to stress, it was on your slide, but you didn't stress it. I think that everyone signed the risk-benefit assessment. That means that you're not taking a decision alone. And that's one of the problems with inspections. It's one person goes there, and they do not want to take the responsibility. But if it is a group of people, if it's the policy, if it's a strategy from the council, city council, or whatever, and it's signed, then you are backed up by, when you take a decision, you know you're not alone. So it's much easier to have this risk-benefit assessment when you know you're not alone, and people will stand by you. That's why the manifesto, the play manifestos that you have, we also had a European play manifesto. Yeah, remember that one? So where you state the values, we talked about it this morning, where you state the values, what stands behind, why do you say these are benefits and why you fight for them. Then it's much easier to make this balance between the benefits assessment with the risk, the bad risk assessment, what you don't want there. So this, in the process, it is really, really important that you feel that you are backed up. And even for courts, because then when it's a case in court, you can show to the court that you knew what you were doing, okay? And this also brings me to the risk management process, that system, that the part 7 on the standard. I always come back to standards because I know this is a big concern here. So it's very beautiful to say, oh, don't worry about standards or whatever, but we do have to care about standards. So part 7 tells you that operators should implement a risk management system. So if you do implement this, it means that you have things in writing. Harry, you said something about, oh, yes, sometimes we have to write it. It's a pity, but we have to. Yes, it's better that you write it. Because if you write down your risk management thinking, why you are taking these decisions, and you include there the benefits, what you want to achieve with this play area, then it's much easier to also stand for it if something bad happens out of your control, not out of bad maintenance, bad not complying, but you are doing things correctly. You are monitoring. You accept these kind of risks. The standard in the introduction called a controlled environment, risk-controlled environment, something like this in the standard. But use that. You know what you are doing. And you, when I say you, it's not one person. It's the organization, it's the board, it's the city council, whatever. You have a strategy, you have a policy, and when you do your risk-benefit assessment, this is your umbrella. Of course, if there is a law, it's part of it. But as we said before, we can't change the laws. Laws are not here to slave us, but to serve people. So that's what we citizens have to do. Laws should serve the people and children's interests. So I just wanted to make this connection with the standard, okay? And in the risk-benefit assessment, you also have to include your risk assessment, as Tim said in the beginning, hazards identification, and the hazards as the basis for risk. We always have hazards, right? So how much risk are you able to accept? Bad risk, let's say, because you are weighing them with the benefits. And of course, the benefits will vary for each situation. So for me, that was important it looks like a complicated process, but I know that liability and you feel backed up, it's very, very important.
Yes, I understand, thank you. I'm wondering when the risk-benefit assessment is happening on designated space for play, a playground. Sorry. Yes. And there is something that really is not possible to change or reconstruct in order for the item to comply with the standards. And you use the risk-benefit assessment to advocate for the element. Can you please explain a little bit?
This was in the United States of America, the world capital of litigation. A school in Washington, D.C. put in a piece of play equipment that did not comply. It did not clearly comply with the American standards. In fact, it was probably an arrangement that nobody had thought of. So it was a new configuration. And the play inspector used and wrote up a written risk-benefit assessment of that structure. And the school has signed off, again, on that risk-benefit assessment. So I guess I know the play inspector. She's also a play designer, and she really wants to see a change in this area. Her name is Megan Talarowski, and she's a real force for change. Her company is called Studio Ludo. But in this case, she was a certified play inspector, and she helped the school go through this process. And so now they have justified their decision to keep this structure through a risk-benefit assessment. I've got one other example, not from the United States of America, but from just north of the border in Canada, where there was, somebody asked earlier about legal cases around this issue. In Canada, there was a serious accident on a playground. It was part of a holiday scheme. So the children were playing on the playground as part of a school holiday play scheme, and a child fell off and hit their head. And it went right the way to the Supreme Court because it was a serious injury. And the judge rejected the claim. He said, yes, the child's been injured, but there was no fault. And he used, in effect, he used a risk-benefit argument to say that. He said, of course, there is a risk when children play on play equipment, and you cannot eliminate that risk. And the staff who were there could not be expected to try and stop the games that were being played. And he actually cited, he pointed to a Canadian statement about risk I think it's published by an organization called Participaction. And that is, it's again, just like in the UK, it's a consensus statement. So lots of national organisations signed up to this statement on the on outdoor play, and the judge pointed to that statement and said, this is why I've made my decision. So you can say in Canada, the fact that a group of people like you came together and drew up a statement about risk in play helped to make a good legal case for risk in that country. So I think there's a real lesson there for other countries.
Nicola?
I just wanted to come in to add that in the UK, other professions are starting also to look at risk-benefit assessment. So one profession that also uses this approach now in the UK, and this has developed kind of alongside us in parallel, really, is the medical profession and doctors. It's now quite well established in the UK that before you give somebody an operation, you consider the risks of the operation and you consider the benefits of the operation, and on that basis you come to a decision on whether to proceed or not with a particular operation or treatment. So this is running right through medical practice in the UK, dentistry as well. So it's not just us in play, it's other professions too. The other thing that may help you is if you go to the Play Safety Forum website in the UK and you Google Play Safety Forum, on there we have an example of a written risk-benefit assessment for a play space in a park designed by a landscape architect. And there is guidance and a blank form and how to fill in the form. And there is also an example of the form completed. And I find this very useful because when you start with a blank sheet of paper and say, I'm going to do a risk-benefit assessment, well, how? It's always helpful to have another example of one that's already been done that you can then get ideas and inspiration from.
Thank you, Nicola. Mr. Richter.
And the importance is, from the new system and risk-benefit assessment, is that till this or till the last years before, we was concentrated on the standard. Und zwar, we was 100% concentrated of the standard, and we have all had the feeling, if it's complying with the standard, it's safe. And this is not. And it is not enough. As you said, the system is old. Using your intelligence and understanding of situation, nothing else is risk-benefit assessment and making decisions then. So in all areas of life, as well, we all day do this. So this is, but in the dealing with safety on playgrounds, this was years before not. And by this reason, it's so important to speak so carefully and so concentrated about this new added way of looking to this.
And just to say, it is in the Australian standards. So the Australian playground safety standards, which were revised last year, have support for risk-benefit assessment in it.
And the form Nicola mentioned, so there is an inspector who I assume is somehow trained in order to do the risk-benefit assessment, plus he can use a form that in UK, I mean, is actually the existing document that just helps him to do the process.
Yeah, it's an example of a document. So it's very important, as Helena said, to record how you came to your decision, because that will help you to make the decision, and it will also protect you in court if something goes wrong. And so it's just an example of how it can be done so that other people can use that to deal with similar situations.
By the reason, if something is not based on the standard and nevertheless decided as to be safe, then you had to make a rationale for this and you had to write it down, and you can say, okay, this is complying with the standard, and next sentence, as you have said before, this is safe. Or you can say it's not complying with the standard, in this point not, and in this point not. But using the system of risk assessment, we find out it's safe. So the certification is done, safe. This is the difference.
And when we look at the practical side of the process, how many people are usually involved in this risk-benefit assessment? How many people and what professions? Thank you.
Of course, it varies depending on the structure or the activity. It's used a lot in educational activities. So not to do with equipment, but say forest kindergarten programs will often use it. Then it's usually the team of teachers, maybe also the manager. So it varies. But I would say a good place to start is to think about who has an interest in the space or the decision. And it's good to involve them if you can. So it will be the designer maybe, or the manufacturer. Maybe also the person who maintains the space, because we already know that maintenance can be part of your safety system. It can be done well, or it can be done badly. Sometimes I hear children are involved. You ask children for their views. I think sometimes that's a good idea, sometimes it's not such a good idea. We can maybe talk about that later. Of course, parents as well. By the way, I've been really itching to say something about parents. I'm sure I'm a parent. Most of us in this room are parents. We are not all the same, okay? So when you make sweeping statements about parents today, blah, 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 no. Some parents are anxious and overprotective. Some parents have always been anxious and overprotective. The real problem is the parents who are anxious and overprotective and have a big megaphone, yes? And they shout and they slam on the table and they say, this is too dangerous and you must take it out. Those are the parents who are the problem, right? And that's a minority of parents. But it's a challenge for a school or a nursery or a council or a park manager. But again, thinking about your values and why you're making playgrounds in the first place, and then showing your thinking, maybe through a risk-benefit approach, will help you respond to those anxious and vocal parents and say, well, okay, so you may feel this way, but I've got 99% of parents behind me who really want more challenge for their children. So if you don't like it, maybe you should go to another playground or another school or another nursery.
Thanks. Maybe it's time for a question from audience, if you have nějaké otázky. Vidím tam vzadu, dobře, děkuji.
Já bych se ještě jednou chtěla zeptat, je to tedy dokument, který si může kdokoliv vyrobit a má pak následně může mít využitelnou nějakou právní hodnotu, ale není to jako otázka jenom pro nějakou autorizovanou osobu.
Tohle přesně byl můj dotaz, že když si
Děkujeme za upřesnění, děkujeme, výborný
Když si
dotaz.
představím jako v našich podmínkách, tak si myslím, že tam by byl potřeba nějaký certifikátor nebo někdo vlastně z certifikační agentury nebo ústavu, kdo by posvětil tenhle risk benefit assessment. That in our Czech condition, I feel that microphone.
Can I just say, it was a long process to develop risk-benefit assessment. I don't think people should leave this room and think you can do it tomorrow here in Czech Republic and you have answered all your questions. It's a gift, right? It's a present from the UK to you to figure out how you use it and when, and if it helps. All I will say is I could tell you 5 or 6 other countries where there are play activists, artists, campaigners who want to do a better job for children. Sweden, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Belgium, and there are people talking in each of those countries. Spain, maybe Portugal, I don't know. And so in each of these countries, people are saying, yes, this kind of approach is helpful. And then it's down to you to figure out how you do that, or maybe you do something else. Okay, so it's not me telling you, do risk-benefit assessment, it's the way to go. I'm saying, here is this idea, talk about it with the inspectors and the certification people and the standards bodies and educators, and see if it will help. But yes?
Okay, thank you.
Helen?
So just to say that in Portugal, it helps a lot that we have the university behind us, for sports, human kinetics, is it that? Human kinetics and child development. So we have this old PhD professor. He goes on TV. He goes on advertising with washing machine powder. So with dirty children, and you let your children play. He works a lot with schools, and there is a lot of research behind from Portuguese reality. So that also helps a lot to support this. And we have a law in Portugal, but
Harry?
still, it works a lot.
Just a very short point while I've still got a little bit of voice left. It may help a lot if you find some safety experts that want to use their expertise to enable things to happen, not to stop things happening. Yeah, Marianne Bressoni from North America, Canada. David Ball in England.
Safety experts that risked their career in safety in order to start to advocate for children.
David Ball is the professor of risk management at Middlesex University. I can't remember how, Tim will probably remember how he got involved in play, but he's involved in play. He's been on panels what to do with nuclear waste. What do you do with an old oil well when it's decommissioned? Great big national things like this. And somehow we got him interested in play. And he is a pure scientist in his approach, but he's been on side. He wants to use his expertise to help children find a better quality of life.
Thank you.
Ještě nějaká otázka, než uzavřeme tento blok?
Pan
Gavlovský?
Gavlovský vzadu ze zhora bude.
Tohle si není trošku potíž v tom, že my máme tu povinnost to certifikovat. V mnohých zemích tady asi to není, takže oni se můžou rozhodnout, že zváží to riziko, ale my tady máme pořád uzákoněno to, že ten vybraný výrobek, ten dětský herní, prostě to musí mít.
Máte pravdu. Já bych možná teďka poprosila pana Sonka a možná, jestli ještě bude Helena nebo někdo.
Už to funguje. Já si vůbec neumím představit, jestli to bude tady s těma našima autorizovanýma osobama možné, jako, jo? Protože tam je princip černobílý. Jak to tam do toho vůbec dostanou, jo? Do toho to prostě, ta se musí, přesně dneska tu je první takový seminář, který možná otevře cestu a bylo by dobře. Jako.
Elger?
Yeah, I really would like to answer this question because we have a comparable system in the Netherlands. We do have compulsory certification. Not that I like it, but we do have it. It's different like in Germany. So we had to learn to deal with that as well. But it shouldn't be a black and white thing. That is the whole problem. It's not black and white. It's a discussion. And there's nothing wrong, I'm going to repeat this again, to have the standard as a base, and then you can deviate. And it's about common sense and willingness and maybe a change of culture. But it's also not an instrument that you use to push through what you want. It is consensus about what we actually want to give to children. So forget about the black and white and look for the more brighter colors in it.
Thank you, Elger. Thank you very much. I see Mr. Fuchsa. Thank you.
Já jsem tady včera vlastně hovořil, jakým způsobem se nám daří certifikovat a víceméně závěr byl, a nebyl to jenom náš, ale i dalších některých kolegů, kteří dělali speciální projekty, že já teda úplně nesouhlasím tady s panem Sonkem, s kterým se známe, s kterým my nemáme problémy, aspoň já to tak vnímám, že ten systém je černobílý na úrovni certifikačních orgánů. I včera jsem zmínil, že pracujeme s TIFem a že jsme schopni dojít k nějakému rozumnému závěru, že ty naše produkty certifikujeme. Ale naopak jsem taky včera vyzdvihl, což teda pan Sonek tady nebyl, že narážíme na ten černobílý přístup právě u některých, znova říkám, některých kontrolorů. Takže já v tomto nejsem úplně tak negativní, pokud se to posune někam dále v rámci nové úpravy normy, že ty certifikační orgány budou na to připraveny, že s náma takhle mohou nějaké věci dělat, hodnotit tady ten přínos, ale pak tam vidím to druhé kolo, že pak to může narážet na tu striktní černobílou kontrolu až po tom provozu, nebo až když my to normálně prostě dáme do provozu.
Dobře, děkujeme.
Děkuju.
Poslední poznámky.
Helena.
Yeah, about black and white, I think I stressed that very well yesterday, that the standard is not black and white. It's everything but not black and white. I had a slide where I was showing you that there are many shells in the standard, more than 200, but only, not half of them are possible to validate in a black and white way. So immediately, even with the shells, you have to make risk assessment. Then you have more than, I think, 40 shoots, which are all recommendations, so you also need risk assessment. So I cannot imagine how you certify, or in your way of certifying playgrounds, in a black and white way. Which is the criteria? Where is the criteria? It's not in the standard. This standard is certainly not black and white, I think. And even, and even in this standard, you have at least, in the new standard, 4 times the need for risk assessment. It is written, risk assessment is needed, risk assessment is needed, risk assessment is needed, and the other time is shall be done, or risk assessment shall be done with the shall. So you already have there 4 times in this new standard. And in the introduction and scope, as we saw yesterday and again today, benefits for children is there all the time. Benefits, this is for benefits. So risk assessment is clearly there. And for me, risk-benefit assessment is also there in another way. So how can you do black and white? Yeah. Because then it's really specific criteria for Czech Republic. It's not in the standard of black and white. Yeah. I'm sorry to say.
Děkuju, Heleno, děkuju moc. My tady tento panel ukončíme, uděláme krátkou pauzu a jestli chceš poděkovat.
Chceme teď poděkovat všem panelistům a zejména Timovi a Nicole, kteří už právě musí na letadlo, proto potřebujeme teď striktně už skončit. Thank you very much.